The first warning came not with a thunderous explosion or a blinding flash of light, but with a whisper of data streaming across quantum communication networks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez noticed the anomaly during a routine scan of deep space monitoring systems at the Global Aerospace Research Center. Her fingers hovered over the holographic interface, tracing the strange signal pattern that seemed to pulse with an intelligence far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Outside the research facility's panoramic windows, the early morning light cast long shadows across the California coastline. Rows of advanced sensor arrays dotted the landscape, their sleek metallic surfaces reflecting the first rays of sunrise. Inside the command center, a subtle tension began to build as Elena's preliminary analysis took shape. Director Chen, she called out, her voice steady despite the growing realization of what the data might mean. The room's senior researchers gathered around her workstation, their breath collectively catching as the initial scans resolved into a more complete picture. The incoming signal represented something unprecedented. It wasn't just another piece of space debris or a random electromagnetic anomaly. This was a structured communication that suggested not just intelligence, but a level of technological sophistication that made human advancements look like primitive stone tools. "It's a signature," Elena explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. "But not like anything we've seen before. The computational complexity is, well, it's beyond our current understanding." Director Marcus Chen studied the readouts, his decades of military and scientific experience wrestling with the implications. The signal suggested a massive technological presence approaching the solar system's outer boundaries. Preliminary calculations indicated a fleet of unprecedented scale, with technology so advanced it could potentially neutralize Earth's entire defensive infrastructure in moments. Across the globe, similar research centers began picking up the same anomalous signals. In orbital stations, on remote scientific outposts, and in advanced monitoring facilities, scientists and researchers started connecting the dots. Something was coming, something that didn't conform to any known model of space exploration or interstellar travel. Elena's team worked frantically, running multiple simulation scenarios. Each model painted a more concerning picture. The approaching technological signature suggested a civilization that had long since transcended the limitations of traditional space travel. They weren't just advanced, they were so far beyond current human understanding that traditional defensive strategies seemed laughably inadequate. "We're looking at a potential first contact scenario," Marcus murmured, his fingers tracing the holographic projection of the incoming signal. "But this doesn't feel like a peaceful exploration. This feels like preparation." The research center transformed around them. What had been a routine morning of scientific exploration became a hub of intense activity. Communication lines to global defense networks lit up. Military strategists, political leaders, and scientific experts began converging, both physically and through secure quantum communication channels. Elena noticed something peculiar, buried deep within the signal's complex structure. Beneath the overwhelming technological superiority, there was a pattern. Not a weakness precisely, but something that didn't quite fit the perfect mathematical precision one would expect from such an advanced civilization. "It's almost like," she muttered, zooming deeper into the signal's intricate framework, "they're expecting a specific type of response, but not from us." The implications were staggering. Whoever or whatever was approaching had a predetermined expectation about how intelligent life would react. And humanity, with its chaotic, unpredictable nature, was about to prove them catastrophically wrong. As the first reports began reaching global leadership, a strange sense of calm settled over the research center. This wasn't a moment of panic, but of profound potential. Humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest challenge and its most extraordinary opportunity. The Zornak Collective was coming, and they had no idea what they were about to encounter. The first wave of Zornak attacks came without warning, a massive burst of energy that should have obliterated human defensive capabilities in seconds. Massive ships materialized at the edge of the solar system, their structures defying every known law of physics. Energy signatures unlike anything in human scientific records pulsed with devastating potential. In the Global Defense Command Center, General Marcus Chen watched as the initial assault unfolded. Holographic displays lit up with incoming projectile and energy weapon trajectories. By all mathematical calculations, Earth's defensive systems should have been destroyed within moments of the first strike. But mathematics did not account for human ingenuity. Reroute power from secondary grid, Chen barked into the communication system. Across the planet, military and civilian infrastructure began to move with a fluidity that defied traditional combat protocols. Where a conventional military would have been paralyzed, human defenders adapted instantaneously. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked furiously in a backup research facility, her team analyzing the alien weapon signatures in real time. They weren't just defending. They were learning, processing, understanding the very fabric of the alien attack with each passing second. The first alien energy burst targeted major communication satellites. In any other scenario, this would have crippled global communication networks. Instead, amateur radio operators, civilian communication experts, and military communication specialists began creating an entirely new network. Mesh communication systems sprang up overnight, routing signals through unexpected pathways. High above the Earth, the first direct confrontation began. Zornak ships, massive geometric structures that seemed to bend light itself, launched precision strikes against orbital defense platforms. What should have been a massacre turned into something entirely unexpected. Human spacecraft, a mix of military and hastily retrofitted civilian vehicles, moved with an unpredictability that completely disrupted alien targeting systems. Where alien computational models expected straight-line defensive maneuvers, human pilots introduced chaos. They used gravitational assists, unexpected acceleration patterns, and maneuvers that seemed to defy basic combat logic. "They're not following any standard defensive protocol," muttered the lead Zornak commander, his advanced computational systems struggling to process the human response. Each human action introduced a variable that the alien strategic algorithms couldn't predict. In major cities around the world, emergency response teams transformed into impromptu defense units. Communication networks that were supposed to be destroyed instead became conduits of resistance. Social media platforms became real-time intelligence gathering systems. Every citizen became a potential point of resistance. The alien attack, designed to be a surgical strike of total devastation, was turning into something completely unexpected. Humanity wasn't just defending. They were fighting back with every resource available. Orbital defense platforms that should have been destroyed began redirecting alien weapon energy. Research facilities converted their most advanced scientific equipment into makeshift defensive systems. Universities became command centers with students and professors working alongside military personnel to develop counter-strategies. "We're not just a target," Elena said, watching the real-time battle unfold. "We're a living adaptive system." The Zornak had encountered countless civilizations. They had perfected a method of conquest that had worked across hundreds of planetary systems. Precise calculations, overwhelming technological superiority, and a complete understanding of how intelligent species would respond. But they had never encountered humans. Each human action introduced a level of unpredictability that the alien computational systems couldn't process. Where a traditional military would have a clear chain of command, human resistance was decentralized, adaptive, almost organic in its response. As the first hours of the conflict concluded, the Zornak found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Their initial attack, which should have been a complete victory, had transformed into something else entirely. A dance of defiance, and humanity was just beginning to learn the steps. Deep within the most secure research facilities, something extraordinary was happening. General Marcus Chen watched as Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team began to unravel the fundamental difference between human cognitive processing and the alien computational systems. "It's not just about intelligence," Elena explained, her fingers tracing complex neural network simulations on the holographic display. "It's about how we think, how we process information, solve problems, and most importantly, how we adapt." The Zornak had spent millennia perfecting their technological and strategic approaches. They had conquered countless civilizations by reducing warfare to mathematical precision. Every battle was a complex equation, every strategy a perfectly calculated algorithm. But humans introduced something entirely outside their comprehension. Emotional intelligence, creative problem-solving, and an almost intuitive approach to challenges. In the Orbital Defense Command, pilots were rewriting the entire concept of space combat. Traditional military training gave way to something more fluid, more dynamic. A young lieutenant named Sarah Martinez demonstrated this perfectly during a recent skirmish. When her squadron's standard defensive formation was compromised, she didn't follow any standard protocol. Instead, she initiated a series of maneuvers that seemed to defy basic physics. It was like watching jazz, Marcus noted in his report. Completely improvised, yet somehow perfectly coordinated. The alien commanders struggled to comprehend this approach. Their computational models predicted human actions with near-perfect accuracy in previous conquests. But these humans were different. Each prediction was immediately invalidated by an action that seemed to come from pure intuition. Research teams around the globe began to understand the true nature of human potential. The brain wasn't just a computational device. It was a creative ecosystem. Where alien intelligence saw problems as equations to be solved, human intelligence saw them as challenges to be reimagined. Dr. Rodriguez's team discovered something groundbreaking. Human neural networks didn't just process information, they created entirely new pathways when confronted with unexpected challenges. It was as if the human brain was a living, breathing, adaptive system that could literally rewire itself in real time. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a complex neural mapping. Traditional AI would see a problem and apply the most efficient solution. But the human brain, it creates multiple potential solutions simultaneously, then quickly discards the less effective ones. The military began to develop entirely new training protocols. Instead of rigid command structures, they implemented adaptive team-based approaches that emphasized individual creativity within a collective framework. Every soldier, every pilot, every technician was now a potential problem solver. In space, this translated to combat that seemed almost like an improvisational dance. Human spacecraft moved with a fluidity that completely disrupted alien targeting systems. Where alien ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, human vessels seemed to flow like water, unpredictable, adaptive, alive. The Zornak began to realize they were facing something unprecedented. Their initial reports had classified humans as a primitive species with limited technological capabilities. Now they were witnessing a form of intelligence that defied all their previous understanding. "They're not just fighting," one alien strategist noted in their internal communications. "They're reimagining the entire concept of conflict." Global communication networks became a testament to human adaptability. When traditional infrastructure was damaged, people immediately created alternative communication methods. Amateur radio operators, satellite hackers, even community mesh networks sprang up overnight. Each disruption became an opportunity for innovation. Marcus Chen understood the deeper implication. "We're not just defending," he told Elena. "We're demonstrating a fundamental truth about intelligence itself." The battle was no longer just about survival. It was becoming a profound demonstration of what intelligence could truly mean. The Zornak had mastered technological perfection. Humans were mastering the art of possibility. As the conflict continued to evolve, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity was about to show the galaxy something it had never seen before. Not just a method of survival, but a completely new way of understanding existence itself. The research facility hummed with an energy that was part scientific discovery, part controlled chaos. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a collection of hybrid technology that defied every conventional understanding of engineering. Captured alien components lay scattered across workstations, intertwined with human-designed systems that seemed to breathe with an almost living intelligence. "We're not just reverse engineering," Elena explained to General Marcus Chen. "We're creating something entirely new." The breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of quantum computing, biological neural network principles, and the alien technology's core processing units. Where the Zornak saw their technology as a perfect unchanging system, humans viewed it as a starting point for innovation. Each captured alien component underwent a transformation. Research teams from diverse backgrounds, computer scientists, biologists, materials engineers, even artists and musicians, contributed unique perspectives. A microprocessor designed for absolute precision was reimagined with adaptive capabilities that allowed it to learn and modify its own functioning. Spacecraft workshops became laboratories of radical innovation. Engineers began developing defense systems that could predict and adapt to alien weapons in real time. The key was not in matching the Zornak's technological perfection, but in creating systems that could fundamentally change their own operational parameters. A breakthrough came from Dr. Rodriguez's most unconventional team member, Dr. Kai Wang, a neuroscientist with a background in improvisational jazz. Technology isn't just about calculation, he would often say. It's about conversation. His team developed a revolutionary approach to spacecraft defense. Instead of fixed shield technologies, they created adaptive membrane systems that could change their molecular structure in milliseconds. When an alien weapon struck, the ship's exterior would literally reconfigure, dispersing energy in unpredictable patterns. Military testing facilities became workshops of constant experimentation. Pilots worked alongside engineers, providing real-time feedback that immediately transformed technological designs. Each failed test was not a setback, but an opportunity for innovation. The hybrid technologies began to show capabilities that shocked even their creators. Spacecraft could now communicate with each other in ways that went beyond traditional communication protocols. They shared information, adapted strategies, and made collective decisions with a fluidity that resembled organic intelligence. General Chen watched a simulation of the new defensive systems. "It's like they're alive," he muttered, watching how the technological components seemed to move and interact with an almost sentient quality. Elena understood the deeper implication. The Zornak had created technology designed for perfect, unchanging efficiency. Humans were creating technology that could dream, that could reimagine itself with each new challenge. Global research centers began sharing information at an unprecedented rate. What would have taken years of traditional research was now happening in weeks. The entire human technological ecosystem had transformed into a living, breathing innovation machine. Satellite networks became adaptive communication webs. Each node could reconfigure itself if other nodes were damaged. Transportation systems developed emergency rerouting capabilities that could adapt to changing planetary conditions. Every piece of technology became a potential defensive asset. The most surprising developments came from unexpected sources. A team of environmental engineers developed energy absorption technologies inspired by how certain deep-sea organisms manage extreme pressures. Geneticists contributed insights into adaptive systems based on cellular response mechanisms. "We're not just fighting," Elena told a gathering of international research leaders. "We're reimagining what technology can be." The Zornak had approached their conquest with the assumption of technological superiority. They were about to discover that true technological advancement was not about perfection, but about potential. As the hybrid technologies continued to develop, one thing became clear: humanity was creating something far beyond a defensive system. They were developing a new understanding of what technology could represent, not as a static tool, but as a living, adaptive ecosystem of innovation. The technological symphony was just beginning to play its first notes. The Zornak Psychological Warfare Division had perfected their approach over centuries of galactic conquest. Their communication systems were designed to penetrate the deepest psychological vulnerabilities of any known species. Targeted broadcasts could break the spirit of entire civilizations within hours, reducing populations to passive submission before a single weapon was fired. They had never encountered humans. The first psychological attack came as a massive neural transmission designed to overwhelm human communication networks with a precise emotional dampening frequency. In every previous encounter, This technique had reduced target populations to a state of collective despair and hopelessness. Instead, something extraordinary happened. In community centers, online forums, local gathering spaces, and emergency shelters, people began to respond in a way the Zornak could not comprehend. The attempted psychological assault became a catalyst for unprecedented human unity. A small community in rural Montana became the first clear example of this unexpected resistance. When the alien transmission hit, instead of experiencing despair, the community gathered. Local farmers, teachers, students, and emergency workers began sharing stories of resilience. What was meant to break their spirit became a moment of collective strength. Social media platforms transformed into networks of rapid support and information sharing. Where the Zornak expected fragmentation, they found connection. Each attempted psychological attack was met with a wave of human creativity, humor, and defiance. "They're trying to make us afraid," said Marcus Chen, analyzing the psychological transmission data. "But fear has never been our primary response." Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered something profound in the analysis. The alien psychological weapons were designed with mathematical precision, each emotional frequency calculated to produce a specific response. Humans, however, processed emotions in a way that defied these precise calculations. Global communication networks began to develop. Adaptive response protocols. Communities started sharing psychological defense strategies. Support groups formed instantly, connecting people across different languages, cultures, and geographical boundaries. The Zornak watched in increasing confusion as their most sophisticated psychological weapons produced the opposite of their intended effect. Instead of breaking human resolve, each attack seemed to strengthen it. A broadcast intended to create despair became a rallying cry. Attempts to showcase the futility of resistance transformed into stories of hope and collective action. The alien psychological warfare team found themselves facing a fundamental problem. Humans did not respond to emotional manipulation in any predictable way. In occupied territories, local populations began to develop unique resistance strategies. Where previous civilizations would have submitted, humans found ways to maintain their cultural identity, their sense of humor, their fundamental hope. Schools continued to operate under impossible conditions. Artists created works that captured the spirit of resistance. Musicians composed songs that spread hope faster than any communication network could track. Each small act of defiance became a weapon more powerful than any technological assault. The psychological battlefield became a testament to human complexity. Emotions were not a weakness to be exploited, but a source of incredible strength. Fear, hope, love, determination. These were not fixed states to be manipulated, but dynamic energies that could transform entire communities. Global leaders began to understand the deeper implication. This was not just a military conflict. It was a profound confrontation of different understanding of intelligence, emotion, and collective potential. "We are not just fighting," General Chen told a gathering of international leaders. "We are demonstrating the true nature of human potential." The Zornak had conquered countless civilizations by understanding their psychological breaking points. Humans were showing them that true strength was not about the absence of fear, but about how communities could transform fear into collective action. As the psychological warfare continued, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity was writing an entirely new chapter in the understanding of resilience, hope, and collective human spirit. The battle was far from over, but humanity had already won something far more profound than any military victory. The solar system became a battlefield unlike any in galactic history. Massive Zornak ships filled the space between planetary orbits, their geometric forms casting long shadows across the darkness. What should have been humanity's final moment became something entirely unexpected. General Marcus Chen stood in the Global Defense Command Center, a holographic battlefield spreading out before him like a living, breathing organism. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked beside him, her fingers dancing across adaptive communication interfaces that seemed to anticipate strategic needs before they fully formed. The hybrid technologies developed in previous weeks transformed the human defensive capabilities. Spacecraft no longer moved in traditional military formations. Instead, they flowed like a liquid, each vessel communicating and adapting with near instantaneous precision. A young squadron leader named Camila Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, led a group of spacecraft in a maneuver that defied every known principle of space combat. When Zornak energy weapons targeted her squadron, the ships didn't just defend, they transformed. Molecular adaptive shields changed configuration mid-attack, dispersing energy in impossible patterns. "They're not just fighting," Marcus muttered. Watching the battle unfold, "they're dancing." The Zornak commanders found themselves facing a fundamental problem. Their computational models, which had predicted human responses with near-perfect accuracy in previous conquests, now failed completely. Each human action introduced a variable that their systems couldn't process. Orbital defense platforms became living systems. When one section was damaged, surrounding platforms would immediately reconfigure, sharing defensive capabilities, compensating for weaknesses. It was less like a military defense and more like an organic response. Elena's research team had discovered the key. Traditional defense systems were about rigid protection. Human systems were about adaptive response. Each attack became an opportunity for learning, for transformation. Civilian communication networks played a crucial role. Amateur radio operators, satellite hackers, and community communication experts created a global information web that the Zornak couldn't penetrate. Information flowed like water, changing course instantly when blocked. The battle moved beyond traditional understanding of warfare. It wasn't about overwhelming force, but about constant adaptation. Where Zornak ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, human vessels seemed to flow like living things, unpredictable, responsive, alive. Spacecraft developed by different international teams showed remarkable diversity. A vessel designed in Japan would communicate seamlessly with a platform developed in Brazil, sharing information and adaptive strategies in milliseconds. Cultural differences became a source of strength, not division. Marcus watched as a group of spacecraft essentially rewrote the principles of space combat. When standard defensive formations were compromised, they didn't fall back to predetermined backup plans. They created entirely new strategies in real time, as if the entire squadron was a single thinking entity. The Zornak began to realize they were facing something unprecedented. These weren't just defenders. They were creators of an entirely new form of conflict. Planetary defense systems on Earth and its orbital colonies became adaptive networks. A weapon strike in one location would cause immediate reconfiguration across entire defensive grids. What should have been moments of vulnerability became opportunities for counteraction. "We're not just defending," Elena told Marcus, her eyes reflecting the holographic battle unfolding around them. "We're demonstrating a fundamental truth about intelligence and adaptation." As the battle continued, the solar system itself seemed to transform. What had begun as an apparent invasion was becoming something else entirely. A profound demonstration of human potential. The cosmic tide was turning, and humanity was just beginning to understand its true capabilities. The human resistance had become more than a defensive movement. It was a beacon of hope that spread across occupied star systems like wildfire. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the communication networks, seeing something extraordinary unfold. A galactic liberation that began with humanity's unexpected resilience. On distant planetary colonies, oppressed civilizations began to whisper about the humans. Stories spread through encrypted channels, through old communication networks, through desperate messages passed from one occupied world to another. These were not just tales of resistance, but narratives of fundamental transformation. A transmission, intercepted from a Zornak communication hub, revealed the depth of their growing concern. The alien leadership could not comprehend how a single species could create such widespread disruption. What had begun as a simple conquest was becoming an existential challenge to their entire system of galactic control. General Marcus Chen understood the deeper strategic implication. This was no longer just a war of defense. It was a war of possibility. Liberated colonies began to emerge in unexpected places. A mining settlement on the outer rim of a distant star system used techniques learned from human communication strategies to overthrow their Zornak overseers. Another planetary network used adaptive technological approaches developed from human research to disable control systems. The human approach was fundamentally different from previous resistance movements. Instead of centralized leadership, they created a network of shared knowledge. Technical manuals, communication strategies, and adaptive technological approaches spread like a living information ecosystem. Elena's research team had created something unprecedented. Open-source defense protocols that could be adapted to different planetary conditions. A communication system that could function under extreme suppression. Technologies that transformed limitation into opportunity. On Earth, the global response continued to evolve. Universities became strategic research centers. Community groups developed innovative communication and defense strategies. Every sector of human society had transformed into a potential point of resistance. The Zornak found themselves facing a fundamental problem. Their system of galactic control relied on predictability, on the ability to suppress individual and collective potential. Humans demonstrated something entirely different, a capacity for collective action that defied traditional understanding of organization. Diplomatic channels began to open with other subjugated civilizations. Human representatives didn't offer military support or technological superiority. They offered something far more powerful, a methodology of resistance, a way of thinking that transformed oppression into opportunity. A communication network developed that connected resistance movements across multiple star systems. It wasn't a traditional military communication system, but something more fluid, more adaptive. Information flowed like water, changing course instantly when blocked. Marcus Chen recognized the profound nature of what was happening. This was more than a military campaign. It was a fundamental reimagining of collective potential. Research facilities began sharing technologies with liberated colonies, not as a form of technological colonization, but as a collaborative effort. Each civilization added its unique perspective, creating something greater than any single approach could achieve. The Zornak leadership watched in increasing desperation as their carefully constructed system of control began to unravel. What had seemed like a simple conquest was becoming a fundamental challenge to their entire understanding of galactic governance. Elena understood the deeper implication. This wasn't just about defeating an alien force, it was about demonstrating a new way of existing, a model of collective potential that transcended traditional understanding of conflict, cooperation, and possibility. Communication networks began to tell a new kind of story. Not a story of conquest, but of collective liberation. Each liberated colony became a node of possibility, sharing strategies, supporting each other in ways that defied the Zornak's understanding of organized resistance. As the liberation movement continued to spread, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity had started something far greater than a war of defense. They had initiated a profound transformation of galactic potential. The seeds of liberation were taking root, and they were growing faster than anyone could have imagined. The final confrontation was nothing like anyone had predicted. It wasn't a massive space battle or a decisive military engagement. Instead, it was a moment of profound transformation that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Global Diplomatic Center, watching as representatives from liberated civilizations gathered. General Marcus Chen stood beside her, both of them understanding the magnitude of what was unfolding. The Zornak Collective's central command had been systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through a complex network of technological, psychological, and diplomatic strategies. Their system of galactic control, which had seemed unbreakable for millennia, crumbled like a precise mathematical equation suddenly rendered obsolete. What emerged was something entirely unexpected. Instead of a human-led conquest or a traditional victory celebration, the gathering became a collaborative reimagining of galactic potential. Each liberated civilization brought its unique perspective. Technological approaches developed by human researchers merged with innovative strategies from other species, creating something greater than any single approach could achieve. The fundamental lesson was clear. Strength was not about perfection, but about adaptability. Representatives from previously subjugated worlds shared their stories. A mining colony from the Orion cluster described how human communication strategies had helped them develop a more democratic governance system. A research team from a distant water world explained how adaptive technologies had transformed their entire approach to environmental challenges. Elena's research had shown that the human approach was fundamentally different from previous galactic powers. They weren't interested in control, but in potential. Each interaction was an opportunity for mutual growth, each challenge a chance for collective problem-solving. Marcus Chen reflected on the journey. The initial invasion that should have destroyed humanity had instead become a catalyst for a profound, galactic transformation. The Zornak had approached conquest with mathematical precision. Humans had responded with something far more powerful: collective creativity. The diplomatic center became a symbol of this new approach. No single species dominated. Instead, a network of collaborative potential emerged. Communication systems developed during the Resistance became the foundation of a new galactic information network. Technologies were shared, not as weapons, but as tools of mutual understanding. Global research centers that had once focused on defense now turned their attention to collective problem-solving. Challenges that had seemed insurmountable to individual civilizations became opportunities for collaborative innovation. "We're not conquering," Elena explained to the gathered representatives. "We're creating." The remnants of the Zornak leadership struggled to comprehend what had happened. Their entire system of galactic control, built on mathematical precision and technological superiority, had been dismantled by an approach that defied their fundamental understanding of intelligence and organization. Liberated colonies began to develop their own unique approaches to governance and technological development. What emerged was not a uniform system, but a complex network of diverse, interconnected potential. Each civilization contributed its unique perspective, creating something far more dynamic than any previous galactic structure. Marcus understood the deeper implication. This was more than a victory. It was a fundamental reimagining of collective potential. The communication networks that had been developed during the Resistance transformed into a new type of diplomatic system. Information flowed like a living ecosystem, changing, adapting, growing. No single entity could control the flow, but everyone could contribute. As the First Galactic Council concluded, something extraordinary became clear. The human contribution wasn't about technological superiority or military might. It was about demonstrating a different approach to existence, one based on adaptability, creativity, and collective potential. The Zornak had sought to control. Humanity had shown a way to collaborate. In the vast darkness of space, a new possibility had emerged. Not a human empire, not a military victory, but a network of potential greater than any single species could have imagined. The cosmic story was just beginning.